All right, as I said, thanks everyone who has demonstrated their work, and it's really good. And please, for those who are still lagging behind, please let us make sure that we finish by this week. So as I told you in the group, we are going to mostly make sure that we go through most of the CSS essentials so that we can actually get to know how we can style our websites, our web pages professionally. And for some of us who do not understand even the properties, so that you can know how you can handle all of that. So now I'll just go to my desktop as we normally do, and I'll just head over to our workspace, and then I'll create in a new folder and I'll call it CSS fundamentals. Then I'll just cd into it, then I will open it. So I hope you can all see my screen perfectly, and I'll just do an index.html and then an index.css. You should make sure that your extensions are correct. So yes, now let us now start with our simple boilerplate of HTML. I'll just go ahead and remove the metadata and then just change the title as CSS fundamentals. Now inside here, I can go ahead with a div. Let me actually use some sections that are well known. I'll use main. So there is an extension I use when I change my opening tag, it also changes the closing tag. You can see, for me, it changes it, but I actually forgot. I actually forgot the name of the extension. And I really have a lot of extensions. I really don't know if I can know which one. It requires me to go through a lot. So, but you can always search on internet. You can actually get to know what it is. So I'll just go ahead with main. So we normally use main in HTML to just make sure that we let the others know that this is the main content. So the main can either contain, maybe let's say I can have the main within my main, I can have in other components like sections and so on, right? So I can go ahead and do sections. Then within my section, I can just do anything related to a section, right? So now, let us start with linking our HTML to our CSS. We link our HTML to our CSS by just writing a link, and we can look for the one of style sheet. And then we can make sure we change the name of our style sheet. And we can open this by just doing go live. And we can see our HTML was opened. You can cross-check that your CSS was linked by making sure you do your body background to maybe black and check if it has turned into black. If it turned into black, then your CSS was perfectly linked. So for best practices, we normally start building our CSS by making sure that we put this star here, which means we are actually targeting all the HTML elements in general. So this means targeting all the HTML elements. And then we usually do our padding 0 and our margins 0. And the reason as to why we do this, I told it to you guys last time, but I'll need somebody from the audience to let us know or to remind us what I told you about targeting all the elements and making sure their default padding and margin is 0. Why do we need to do this? I'll pick Christian. Do we still have Christian on the call? I think he's gone. So I'll just go ahead and choose Tofile. Tofile, the question is this one. So I'm telling you that for good best practices, you should always start by making sure that you set your default padding and margins to 0. Why do we need to do this, or what does it help us? Might check Tofile. If Tofile is not around, can we have somebody else? Did you guys forget this? My check participant.
I think so. We have to set the default values, especially on the padding and the margin, so that the whole items will be aligned the same, except for the items that we will be adding their own margins according to the design. So
Yes, thanks a lot, Baptiste. So by default, when we are writing some HTML, there is a default margin and a default padding. So you can see we have some default margins and padding. You can see that one. So to make sure that we are going to put there our own, or to make sure that the default margins and padding do not actually change anything as we want, we should make sure that we remove it. So you can see now, when I did that, I removed everything. If I put there, if margins appear there, it means now I am the one responsible for those margins and paddings, right? Yes, and after this, we said now you can write your CSS by using different selectors. You can use what we call a type selector, which is a tag or element selector, whereby you can say maybe your H1 will have a color of red. So here we are using an element selector or a type selector. So we are using an element, a type element of a tag. So this is how you can use it. And if you write your CSS, this is called a selector. And what goes inside the bracket is also divided into two. This is a CSS property, and the other one is a CSS value. And you can always write more than one CSS property by just separating them with the same colon, and you move on with the rest, like padding, and you put there maybe 20 pixels, right? So you can see now this was given a padding of 20 pixels. A padding of 20 pixels, this one means that this is top, left, top, right, bottom, and left. This is what it means. If you want to specify that it's at the top, then you can do padding top. This is also a known property. You can see it will only apply a padding top, right? And if you want to do also some specific paddings, you can as well do padding maybe 20, and you specify also 30 pixels like this, and this will mean this. So the first character, if you have two values, the first value will always be the top and bottom, and the second one will always be the right and left. You can hear me saying top and bottom, not bottom and top, and saying right and left, not left and right, even though they're the same. But I have a reason why I am actually doing that. So we usually say top, bottom, right and left, following the clockwise direction. This is actually going to help you, because if you follow well the clockwise directions, then you will understand this very well. So you will even understand this perfectly. Let me first move on with this actually. So if you have four values, then this means that this is standing for the top. And if you now use the clockwise direction, this is going to be right. If you continue, this is going to be bottom. If you continue, this is going to be left, right? Now, if you have only two, this means that this is top and bottom, and this means this is right and left. Very simple to understand, right? Now you will see that our left has a bigger padding to the top, right? So now, let us move on with now more CSS properties, and we kind of talk about them more. So let us now see how we can do some comments in CSS. So let me write this title of colors. And now if I want to comment it, it's the same thing. We do command and forward space, or we can use the normal things whereby we just do a forward slash. We'll just do a forward slash and then a star, and then we close again with a star and a forward slash. This is how we write comments. But again, if you already know the syntax, please, it is simple. You can always make sure you do command and space, command and forward slash, or you do control and forward slash on Windows, right? So I think this is very simple to do. So that is how we do comments in our CSS. So now, every language has its own syntax of comments. Please be careful. So now, let us look at a property called color. So let us say within our H1, we are putting there a color of red. Let us just do red like this, red like this. And you can see this is now red, right? But to make it more visible, let me put a text align center and also add a padding top of 40 pixels like this, so that we can have it in the center and have it given a padding top. So, but our focus is on the colors. So sometimes we may write colors like this, and other times we may write colors like this, FF, then 0000. You can see this is also red. You can see it's the normal red. And by the way, this is also a package I'm using. This is a package which is highlighting in red, but I think VS Code also adopted this. By default, I think VS Code does this. I don't know. Please make sure you cross-check that. If not, you can make sure that you download some extensions related to colors.
Question:
Yes, yes, please.
What if you put text slash color? What difference does it make?
If you put their text slash color, what do you mean? Like this,
No, in front of color, like element color. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
text and color, like this.
Text
Oh,
slash color.
if you do color and then you put there a slash
No,
like this.
no. Text dash color. Yeah, there.
Underscore
Oh,
color.
text color like this.
Yes.
Underscore.
So if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
really have, if you have your
I
view,
thought that exists.
it might exist, I don't know, in some CSS libraries. In some CSS libraries, it might exist, but in pure CSS, it doesn't. So for me, when I'm actually using CSS, let me show you some of my codes. I think I have some codes which are already open here. Let me show you how, let's say, you can see this. Can you see how I usually do this? You can see this text red 600. This is a red color of 600. And you can see the equivalence in pure CSS by hovering on that. You can see this is equivalent to font size 0 point that, line height. I'm actually hovering, I think, on this one. Let me hover on this. It is equivalent to this, right? It is equivalent to that color written in RGB. RGB is a type of writing colors. We shall see that. So I'm using Tailwind CSS. Tailwind is a CSS library. It's not pure CSS. It's a framework or a library built on top of CSS. So it has its own syntax. But in pure CSS, that one cannot be possible. You need to use pure properties. And if you write a wrong property, always CSS is going to give you a warning, and this warning is going to probably come from the package or from the extension we installed called CSS HTML support, I think.
Yeah, it's just that I saw it somewhere. I used it before. I think I used it.
In pure CSS, or
Yeah, this time.
I
I
don't know. I don't know. Maybe you used it as a class selector. I don't know. You probably used it maybe as a class selector like this, something like this. But purely for
yeah,
CSS, or you had some other library that was actually working with CSS, but the pure class for CSS is color. So you can even obviously see here a known property text color, right? So
yeah,
now
yeah.
let us continue with color. So as I was explaining, so colors, you can actually do colors in, let me create a README. Remember, guys, last time when we were learning, we said you can always create also files by using commands. I'll just go ahead and create a readme.html using command. and I know it was created, and I can even open it without opening this. I can just do code read me like this, and then it will open here. It opened because it was even already here. So I just did this to avoid me taking my hands off the keyboard to click here, right? So you can always use command line to do some of the stuff. So now, colors. So as I said, I can write a color in some text like red. I can also use some things like this as you saw it, right? You can see it still means, this is also because of the extension I have. You can see it still shows red, right? And you can as well do the same thing as RGB, and then you put there brackets, and you kind of do 255, and then you do 0, 0, like this. It will still show red, right? So these are all different ways of actually using colors, and it is up to you to choose. But you will never reach a moment where you only need to use one color. You can use one if you're using hex code or if you're using RGB, but you can't do this alone because this one has limited colors. You already know that one, right? You already know when you write something like this color and you want some suggestions, it will give you some suggestions. You can see these are the colors. They are limited, right? But you might need some mixed colors. Some of them don't even have a name. You know, there are some colors which do not have a specific name. There are known colors with specific names, like these. Some of these you don't even know them, like loyal blue, saddle brown, salmon, stuff like that. Those are well-known colors. But there's some colors which are mixed, and you can't know the specific name. So if you really don't know the specific name, then you need to use at least hex. You can do maybe C0, 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 like this. This is a light gray, but it's not the same as we can do light gray like this, light gray. They look different a bit, right? You can see that. They look different. And they have actually different color codes. You can see the other one is D3, D3, D3. So for this color, there is no specific name of it. We just say it's light gray, but it's not light. There are so many light grays, right? So by that, I mean, it is up to you to choose what kind of colors you would use. But for me, I usually do not go beyond two color types. I usually either do color names like red, brown, orange, or tomato, some things like that. There is actually a color called tomato, so it looks like a tomato. It's that color. So let me bring back this. It's this color. It's called tomato. So I usually use what I call color names. So these are color names. I can put there a comment like this. So these are color names, and then I'll close this comment like this, right? These are color names. Then I also sometimes also do use some hex colors. So by hex colors, I mean the ones starting with a hashtag. And I can go ahead and maybe do a background of C0, 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 as I did, and I can see that background because we mostly use this background. Most of the people usually use this background. So that is why you end up even actually cramming this. So now, what is the difference, or how do we determine this? And some other people can also choose, by the way, to do this. They can choose to have maybe a border. Let me put the border of 2 pixels solid. And then I'm actually trying to use some properties that do have colors. Then I can choose to do RGB, and then I'll just go ahead with 0, 255. And this is actually going to be green and then 0. And what we need to understand here, how did I know that this was going to be green? How did I determine green? So that is what we are going to look at. So let me put there comments. So these are called hex colors, and these are our RGB colors. There is also RGBA. I don't want to make it a separate type because it's an extension of this RGBA, right? It's an extension of this where we just need to add an opacity thing. We can do 0.2. This is actually going to apply an opacity of 0.2 or a transparency of that, right? So we shall come back to all of that. So let us start with color names. So for the color names, it is obvious, right? It's a color that is specified by a name, red, blue, green, and so on. That is very obvious. Then let us go on some hex colors. So hex colors are specified by some color code. And how is that color code defined or got? So let us do hex colors. They are defined with a color code of RR, GG, and BB. So RR and GG and BBB, what does it mean? This is red, this is green, and this is blue. As you all know, most of the colors originate from red, green, and blue. It's a mixture of that. I think you all know that, right? We all learned chemistry. So most of the colors originate from the mixture of the three colors. These colors can be mixed to formulate 100 and millions of colors, right? So now if you want to write a hex color, you start with a hashtag, and then, so the maximum or the lightest is FF, and the darkest is 00, 00 like this, right? And then I can move on with the next. So that is why this became red. Because if the maximum is red with an FF and the minimum are 00, which are green and blue, then you understand the color will be red. Now, if we want green, we shall do this. We shall make sure that the red is minimum or is 0. And then we put there our FF in the middle, and then we put a 00 at the end. Then we'll be having our green, right? And if we want a blue, then we'll do this 00, then 00, then FF. Then we'll have our blue, right? And the rest of the colors, which we do not need to know, can come from changing this. You will never know how you can achieve a certain color. Nobody's going to tell you that, please, unless if you've got used to all the colors, nobody's going to tell you to do some color like this. Let's say some color, let's say this one, tomato. You see how it is in hex code. Let me try 12 on this. If I change it, you can see how it looks. It's FF6347. So the FF6347, you can obviously see where it is coming from. FF to give a maximum red, and then the rest are adjustments of green and red to come up with a tomato color. But nobody's going to come to you and tell you write hex code of this. No, 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 no. You just need to understand the basics where it all comes from, right? If you want to find colors or variants of red, then it means you'll be changing this. If you want to find variants of green, it means you'll be changing this and this, the last ones. If you want the ones of blue, you would change it, you'll be changing these first ones, right? Another thing you need to know about hex colors, it is that they have a shorthand. They have a shorthand whereby you can just, I don't know if shorthand is written, so whereby you can just write three letters only or three codes. So how does that happen, or when does that happen? That one happens if you have double following letters of letters that follow each other that are similar. Like for this one, like for red, we can have the same thing. We can just write one F and then 1 0 and then 1 0, it will still be red. So because these are similar Fs and these are similar zeros and these are also similar zeros, right? You can do the same for green. You can just write 0 and then F and then 0. It will still be green. And you can as well do for blue 0, 0, and F, just like that, right? And these are case how do we say that? Insistive. So it doesn't matter. You can also do the same thing. You can write these things the same way. You can just do CC, you see? And you can as well do CC in small letters. It will still be the same color, right? So CCC is, these are 6 CZs, I would say. It's C multiplied by 6. We're just duplicating C's 6 times. So now, these are what we call hex colors. So please understand the highest is FF and the smallest is 00. And these zeros and FF can be changed with letters and as well as with numbers. And it is not up to you to cram how you can change them. I'll show you another trick that is going to be helpful to you. You can always look at colors if you have this package. This is a package, I think. I think it's a package. Let me try to look for that package here. Colors. I think I installed that package there. Let me see all the packages I have installed. So obviously this is the for brackets for the colors. And this is the color highlight, which is this one. So you can note it down and you can install it later. This is the package that is highlighting my colors. Color info, I think color info, this is what is actually bringing some information related to the colors. So there is also a color picker. The color picker is what is bringing this. I can change this color through the color picker, right? I can even change it to blue or to dark blue. By doing this, I can even see the hex codes. I can even click on the hex codes to change it to XHSL. This is also another type that is not commonly used. And there is also HWB. There are so many. And there is also RGB that we know, right? So you can always allocate the color you want and then be able to use it. So before I continue with another thing on the way you can identify a color, I had somebody ask a question. I had somebody speak. Do you have a question? Are we good? All right. If there are no questions, I think silence means everything looks perfect. So now, let me move on within the browser. How can we identify a color? So if I want to see, let me go on apple.com maybe. If I go on apple.com and I really want to see a certain color that was used here, maybe I want to see this titanium color. So I can just right click on this, do inspect. Let me repeat this.
bitabira inama n'ubundi z'icyongereza
Can you please mute yourself? File. Yes. So I'll come here and inspect. I'll just go on that element. I want the color of that element. I'll inspect. Inspecting means I'll right click. It's right click on that element and then I'll choose inspect. And then if that element was written with some CSS related to colors, I'll obviously see that. But this is an image. This is probably an image or something else. I'll just come here on top. I hope you can see this. I'll just come here on top. There is always a free space to write any CSS you want. I will come and write in color, and then I can just do red, maybe red like this. And the red will show up. So browsers have a color picker. I'll just come and hover on the color, on the rectangular box of the color, and click on it, and then I'll get a color picker. On a color picker, we have this eyedropper. So the eyedropper helps you to point out any color you want to use, and then you will see its color code. Then I'll click on it, and then I'll get something like this. I can hover on this color. You see? I'll hover on this and then press and then click, and you can see I have now the color. You can see it here. I can even copy, or I can even copy from here. You can copy from here or copy from here. This is its color code. If I want to change it, this is the hex code. If I want to change it to RGB, I'll click here. I'll get the RGB one, the equivalence of RGB. So this is an RGBA, which has a, you can see it has a certain value of the A that we were saying we are going to look at. So it has some transparency or some opacity. So this is the color code, and you can always copy this by just knowing that this is RGBA. Then you come and do RGBA, and then you put in 157, 130, 114, 1. We shall look at this. We are still on hex codes. Let us stick on hex codes. I was just showing you how you can always change the type. So the hex code is this one, and now you can take it and use it within your color here. And now we can see that we have, let me remove the rest of this, comment it. Let me remove it like this. So now we can see color. I also removed the color. We can see we have a titanium look, right? You can obviously see that. I would increase the font size of this by giving it maybe 100 pixels. You can see that, right? So it is simple. So there are so many ways I've shown you of how you can actually pick a color you want. So it is not necessary for you to cram these color codes. You just need to know the fundamental, where they actually originate. So it's a mixture of red, blue, red, green, and blue. And usually when you want to have a pure red, then you need to give it a maximum code, and then the rest should be minimum. The same applies to all the other colors, right? The maximum, as I said, the maximum is FF. The max is FF, and the minimum and the min is 00, right? Then you can play around and see how you can achieve so many colors. But just note that you need to do a mixture of some code, and there should be 6 characters. And if they are 3, it means there was a repetition. There were some similar characters following each other, like C1, C1, C1. You can see it is kind of gray. You always get a light gray if you have the same color codes, right? You always have the same thing, except for the black. If you want to get a black one, you always use 6 zeros. It is 6 zeros. And if you want to get white, you always use the maximum. The maximum should give you the white color, right? So it's making them all maximum, you get white, and getting them, doing all minimum, you get black, right? And this applies to even RGBA. You will see how we're going to look at RGBA. It is the same thing, but RGBA is always numbers. RGB, let us start with RGB. RGB means red, green, and blue. It's the same thing here as we saw, right? But the difference, it is red at its maximum is 255. And green at its maximum, it is also 255. And the same applies to this. Now, I'm going to randomly choose one of you guys to tell me the color code using RGB of red. You just do RGB, then brackets, and then you have 3 values. Value 1 separated with a comma, value 2, and then value 3. And these values will be corresponding with red, green, and blue. So what is value 1? I want to get red. What is value 1? Let me go on with Sami. Might check Sami. Might check Samela. Okay, let me move on with the next person. Might check Jose. Because it's the same explanations I've been giving. It's the same explanations as the one we just saw from the hex code. Might check Jose.
Oh, sorry, I was in restroom. Just arrived. That's why I
Okay.
didn't understand the question.
So I was asking, it is the same as actually the hex code. So if I want to obtain a red color using RGBA, now what is going to be value 1, value 2, and value 3? Before previously I explained that this matches with red, green, and blue. So what is the value of value 1 and then value 2 and value 3? If I want to obtain a red color,
Oh, well,
please, guys, let us follow when I'm explaining, please. So
yes,
let me go on with the profile. Profile. If I want to obtain a red color, what should I put here as value 1?
Okay, we can use 25500.
Yes, we need to make sure that we put there a maximum color value so that we are saying we want to maximize red, and the rest should now be 0. Then we shall get a red color. Then I'll come back to Jose. Jose, I'm still with you. Then what if I want to get a green then? It's simple. If I want to get a green, what should I do?
yes, we'll write 255.
Why did you start with 255? If you start with 255, it means you're maximizing red. And we want green.
Uh,
We'll make sure that green has a maximum and the rest have minimum, which is 0. So we'll
yes,
say our first value, which corresponds to red, will be 0 because we want green. And the next value, which is green, for green, it has to be maximum because we want to get green, 255. And the last value, which is blue, it needs to be minimum because we want a full green. Can you see that? So back to you, Jose. If I want to obtain blue, then what should I do?
yes, should minimize green and the red and maximize the blue.
Then tell me the code.
Will be 0, 0,
Comma, you separate them with a comma, 0, and
255.
yes, and then you have your blue. And then if you want to
Yeah.
obtain other colors, you'll be changing these colors. So if you change, if like you come here and change something else that is not red, you change maybe this one and maybe have here 20. So you see, you will still have the red dominating. You see? So you
Yes,
now be giving it a smaller value, 30, because the maximum is 255. You're still giving the green, because it's RGB, you're still giving the green and blue lower values. But if you come and give them like 200 and give this one also 200, you see you're getting close to white. Because if you have all of them as maximum, it's white. You're getting close to white. You can see that. If we continue like 250, you're getting more close to white. Can you see that? Now, if you come and make all of them 255 and this one 255, can you see now what color do we have? It's white, right? This is how we do white. And if you want black, let me bring it down here. If you want, this is white. If you want black, it is making them, all of them 0, the minimum. You're making all of them dark, right? 0, 0, 0. Now you have your black. So this is how we use also RGB. So now RGBA. Now RGBA, as I explained, what does the A means? What does the A mean? RGBA is like this. Let me write it. RGBA, like this. Then what does the A mean? Still, RGB still means red, green, and blue. And the A means what?
So I think it is opacity.
So yes, it goes on with opacity, but the real name is alpha, like this, alpha. So this alpha stands for now our transparency or our opacity. It depends on because if you have opacity, then you have transparency, right? You just need to understand what it means. I'll show you in a moment. So alpha stands for either opacity level or transparency level, right? So now let me just write like this. Let me just do RGBA like this. Just add the A. And then I will do 255, and I'll do 0, and I will do 0. And then here I'll also do 0. I did 0. You see, I now have a color. This color has an opacity. It is almost like dark. It is dark, obviously, right? So now, why did we get this? But if I change this to 1, if I change this to 1, you can see I have my full red. So this one, which is alpha, this one or 0, the A, let me explain this. The alpha value can be the opacity level or transparency level. If you have opacity, then you have transparency level as well, even though they are opposite, right? So now, what do we mean by 0 and 1? So specifically, if you have alpha equivalent to 1, then this means that you have full opacity, right? This one means you have full opacity. If you have full opacity, this means what? If we say you have full opacity, what does it mean to transparency?
0.
Then the transparency means it is 0,
0.
right? So now transparency will mean it is 0. Transparency means you can see through. Then it is 0, you can't see through. Can you really see through the red, a pure red? Right? You can't see through. But make sure you understand this very well. What we put here is not transparency color. It is opacity color, please. I'm trying to say that if you have opacity, you also have transparency. I'm just trying to explain to you so that you understand opacity and transparency. But what goes specifically here is opacity. Let me put it here, not. Please note the alpha is the opacity, right? I'm doing this so that if we write like this, 255, 0, 0, and then we put there 0 like this, you saw that a 1 means we have full opacity. Then a 0 means we have internet.